Hello, everyone. Welcome to Game Over Ottawa. It's the first game back in the real NHL season. Pleased to be joined by Andrew Berkshire of Game Over Montreal. First of all, happy belated birthday. I believe it was a couple days ago. And
Thanks,
it's
man.
a nice little gift for you guys as the Montreal Canadiens beat the Ottawa Senators of a score of 5-2. That was rough for the Sens. Right away, basically, the Canadiens come out flying out the gate, and it was the opposite scenario. Both teams, the Sens were just flat, and you could tell that a couple giveaways at the start of the first period ended up pretty much putting this game out of reach.
Yeah, it was a sloppy game from the Senators. It was a weird one because I feel like overall, you probably look at that one and you're like, it was a pretty close game. Like both teams got roughly equivalent chances, but at the same time, it almost felt like the Senators weren't really in it. Even like they tied it up, and that obviously the game got close, but they couldn't maintain that, and things got away from them right away again. It's kind of one of those. Like I'm not taking anything away from the Canadians. I thought they played really, really well, but it did seem like a bit of an own goal night for the Ottawa Senators.
Yeah, there was a couple of those that I feel like we just kind of simply gave away to you guys. And then, like, not to talk down too much on the Habs, right? I'm gonna pipe down just a bit because I know we probably have 18 people in the chat right now. Probably 15 of them are Habs fans, but a couple of those goals I feel like the Sens just gave to you guys. Plain and simple. Like we're really banged up right now. I think we don't have Norris, Pinto, and well, I guess Cousins to an extent, and then Brady we didn't have tonight, of course. So three of our top forwards not in the lineup. You guys are pretty healthy, it seems like. But I mean, you guys play better than us, plain and simple. Let's just walk through the game, I guess. Do a little recap. Gallagher, a couple minutes in, Drake Batherson has the puck below the goal line, and he was horrible tonight. My goodness, but kind of
Not
just threw.
not a banner game for
No,
Drake
no,
Batherson,
probably
man.
the worst of his career. And there you go, free goal for Brendan Gallagher right in front of the net. Gallagher, that's a spot too, right? He knows how to put the puck in the back of the net, and yeah, puts it up 1-0. Like the first goal of the game, most of the time you're going to win the game if you score the first goal, and that is what the Canadians did. And they kind of just rolled with it, right?
Yeah, yeah, they kept on pushing, which was nice. It's been interesting because I don't know if you saw Damien, but this is the first time that I've been on the show for a Habs win since December 17th.
Ooh, yeah,
The last
it's been
time I
rough for
was
you guys. It
like,
has.
yeah, they had a great December and early January even, but I was busy. I was off on visiting family in Alberta,
Mm.
so I wasn't able to be on the show. And then as soon as I came back, it was just like loss after loss after loss after loss. I'm like, is the curse me? But hopefully that's busted now because I would like to see a few more games where they win the rest of the stretch here. But yeah, really, really strong game for the Montreal Canadiens. It was nice to see them, you know, play a full game.
Yeah,
They've had some
it
good
was.
games in the recent stretches, but just like continually things get away from them. And tonight they kept it pretty tight. Sam Montembeault was not amazing, but he was solid enough, which I think that's pretty good considering he was sitting on the sidelines watching for the entire Four Nations face-off. So not bad. I feel like there's no real major complaints as far as like the Montreal Canadiens are concerned tonight. And obviously we'll talk about it later. We'll talk about Juraj Slafkovsky, but that was a big performance from him. It seemed like it was almost as much as it was a battle between the Habs and the Senators. It was almost like Juraj Slafkovsky versus Tim Stützle tonight.
Yeah, no way. Like Timmy was good at the first half, and he was carrying the team overall. Eventually, like he can't do everything though, and that's kind of what it came down to tonight. Caulfield, of course, makes it 2-0 shortly after, and at this point, I'm like, okay, the game's probably over. Anderson does take a penalty there against Highmore, puts the Sens up on the power play. Timmy swings it down low to Batherson, pass up high to Sanderson, who scores in his second straight game, one in the Four Nations and then one in the regular season. Keeping that mojo up, that's what Sanderson's doing right now. And then shortly after, Tim Stützle takes the puck off of a little bit of a whiff from Matheson and goes in on the breakaway. I like that play from him because Matheson actually lifted his stick a little bit at one point. He caught back him, and there wasn't a penalty. just a little simple stick lift, but Timmy stuck with it and he didn't like flail around and trying to sell the call, which we know he has a reputation of doing. Whether I'm correct or not, but and he sticks with it and ties it up. So at this point, the Sens, like, they're back in it. It's a tough start. You're on home ice, sort of, because Habs fans are once again flooding the building. And then a stupid penalty. Like, I'm sorry, but it's an unnecessary penalty from Cole Reinhardt in the neutral zone for holding, I think it was Anderson, I believe. Like, that's a penalty you should not be taking because it's simple things like those that just kill the game and they kill the momentum. And, of course, like, 5 seconds of the power play, Nick Suzuki wins the draw, back to Hudson, sells the shot, passes over the line, and he's automatic there, right? He's going to score there.
Yep.
And snaps the 10-game goalless drought.
Yeah, it's funny how fast momentum can shift, right? That end of the period there, or not end of the period, but after Ottawa tied it up, it's like, oh man, this game's getting out of control. And it's just that one mental mistake that flips everything. And, it was nice to see Laine get back off break that slump a little bit. But you could actually see him, I thought, break out of the slump a little bit during the Four Nations face-off. Now, I know he didn't score there, but he played really damn well. I know he's playing with great players there, but he was contributing. And, like, watching him this season has been interesting to say the least because no matter how rough things are on the power play, he's still a weapon, right? Like, that shot is just ridiculous, and he can kind of just stand around and wait for the opportunity and hope everybody else can find him. At even strength, it's been a real slog. The skating is just not there, but he actually started to pick it up a little bit at the Four Nations. So I was kind of, in a way, thinking maybe it would have been better for him to have a bit of a rest, but maybe playing with some high-end players kind of got some pep in his step a little bit. And he had some tougher moments tonight, and he had some good moments too. So overall, pretty pleased with Laine.
That's the Laine game, though, right? And watch, he goes and he scores 8 goals in the next 3 games, and then he goes scoreless for the next 10. That's just how he is. He's a one-trick pony, but when he's going, he is automatic from that left half of the ice on the power play. So after the first period, it is 3-2 Canadiens, and then it was pretty much game over when Anderson scores. He's such I feel like most Habs fans kind of hate on Anderson because they always know that there's more there. At least that's what it seems like from an outside perspective.
Yep.
But he gets on the inside. When I'm talking about preventable goals, like, this is another one of them for the Sens. Gallagher just throws a muffin on net. Sure, I guess Ullmark could have played that rebound a little bit better, but why is Nick Jensen not watching Josh Anderson just walk down the slot? Like, why is that happening? I know, sure, Jensen he's banged up right now, but when you're talking about man-on-man defense, it is pretty simple at the end of the day. You just got to cover your guy out front, and Josh Anderson is a good player when he has time and space, I guess, to some degree, and makes it 4-2, and that pretty much sells the game because not shortly after that, sort of like 2-on-2 play, Suzuki throws it in the middle, and then Drake Batherson again misses the puck, and just like he doesn't even really get close to it too. It's like sort of a little bit far away from him, and I don't know if he thought there was someone behind him, but it just ends up on Uri Slafkovsky's stick, and he puts it back in the back of the net. So I don't know how much you can fault Ullmark tonight. He wasn't good straight up, but man, like, what are these goals that the Sens are giving up?
Yeah, I think the biggest one is that Anderson goal, right? The rebound that he gave up off the Gallagher shot. Mm-hmm. He's way too good for that play, right? Yeah. Like, and every goalie has that. Every player has that, right? You're just gonna have moments where your focus is not at 100%, but that was not a great look. And I know that he kind of struggled at moments in the Four Nations as well. So I don't know if maybe it's a situation where Ullmark's starting to get a little bit tired, but at least Forsberg looked pretty good when he came in there.
Yep.
And frankly, as much as, like, I don't think Sens fans are worried about Ullmark, right? Like, you guys have watched him enough this season that you're probably not concerned.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But but you've also got Forsberg there. Whereas, like, for how long have the Senators been in a situation where if one goalie isn't playing so well, it's like, well, we don't have another option. So it's nice to be in the situation that you're in now.
Yeah, I mean, thing is, like, Ullmark really hasn't played that much this year. I think when you look at the starts, Merlainen is around 13, Ullmark's around 25, and then Forsberg's around 20 to 25. So it's been a split, and I mean, Merlainen was doing fantastic, man. He had like a 930, 928 save percentage in 13 games, and unfortunately they had to send him down because Ullmark came back. And Ullmark played okay in the stretch before the Four Nations. And of course, he didn't really get into any games in the Four Nations, but then, comes back here and kind of has a bad game. I mean, that's been the last bad game Ullmark has had since, like, I don't know, maybe November. So it's been a while.
Yeah.
Of course, he got injured in between there. I love this comment here. If you're injured to the point where you can't cover Josh Anderson, this is from Bernardo Sunier. Hope I'm saying that right. Maybe you shouldn't be playing, which is like, it's a good point. The Sens had to dress 11 and 7 tonight just because they're Norris, Pinto, Kachuk are not out like that much longer, but because they're tight on their cap space right now, they're forced to play 11 and 7, and I don't think they can bring up another forward from Belleville, nor is there anyone that can really sub in right now. Like, this team just needs to get healthy. It would be nice to get some bodies in there. Luckily for the Sens, at least, we have 3 days off, so in that case, get some of the top guys back in there, but if not, it's gonna be pretty tough because we're 29-24 right now, but that's 4 straight losses going back to before the Four Nations, and I think right now we're still in the playoff spot, but we would be in the second wild card.
Yeah, and it seems like it's kind of been the thing with the Senators for a while now. Is it seems like they get these good runs, but they're always split up by these really tough runs, right? Like the last several seasons, it seems like they've always tripped coming out of the gate, and then they have this like great middle season and kind of falter at the end. And this year, at least that pattern seems to be like it's not that long.
Yeah,
the streaks, it's like shorter, so it's allowing them to continue to build momentum and like get into a good position going forward. But yeah, they are going to have to find a little bit more consistency. Although I will say, as much as if any Senators fans are worried, I think they're going to be fine. I don't think they're going to be behind. Like, I know that the Columbus Blue Jackets are a great story this year, but I don't think they're going to take the Senators up. Like, I don't see it.
Thing is, we've said that for a while though, right? We're like, oh, Columbus
I know,
fall out.
I know, but at the same time, I'm looking at like the teams that are there, and like the Rangers are a complete mess. The Boston Bruins are past their prime. Like, Ottawa should be a better team than the Boston Bruins right now. And the Detroit Red Wings, I know they're red hot right now. They're 7-1-2 in the last 10. I don't believe in the Red Wings.
I don't either.
I look at their and I don't know many who do. I know that they're playing better lately, but I don't know. That looks like a rebuild to me. That's like they tried to exit it too early, and they don't actually have the horses to pull out of it. That's what the Red Wings look like to me. So I think the Senators, even if it's feeling a little bit rough, are actually in a pretty good position overall.
Yeah, like, they put themselves in a good position. That's the key. And they were 29-20 at one point before this losing streak. So they put they can afford this losing streak right now. You just can't have it pushed to the point where it gets to 7-8 games and you're out of it kind of at one point, and you can't muster up that ground again. It's going to be a crazy end of the season. We'll see if the Habs sort of stay in the mix to some degree. I think you guys improved to 500 tonight, which is a big drop off compared to where you guys, because you were in a playoff spot not too long ago, not for long, but you were there, and it was a bit surprising too, because you had a really rough November and I think first half of December, and then all of a sudden a crazy 25 game stretch there, and you guys were, I think, in first wild card at one point.
They pulled a Senators.
Yep.
right? Stumble out of the gate, get hot in the middle, and then start to fall.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Is I guess that's the phase of the rebuild, right?
that's it.
It's kind of interesting to see it.
Yeah, the parallels I'm seeing with your team right now compared to where the Sens were in 2023 is it's very similar. But
Yep.
just to finalize the game recap here, the Ridley Gregg and Slavkovsky fight. What did you see there? I mean, it was a good tilt. I think Gregg's gone one fight in his career, and that's a good little future player rivalry, I guess you could say, with Gregg, who's a huge pest, and then Slavkovsky, who is, we'll talk about it a bit later, but like, you're kind of wondering, what is he going forward? Like, is he just going to be a skill guy? Is he going to utilize his body? Is he going to be a bit more chippy? And it was a statement game from him tonight. So what did you see there in that fight there? And that play, too?
Yeah, I was surprised because like Slavkovsky has, sorry, in his career gotten hit in vulnerable situations. Not a lot, but he's taken a few. And usually it's somebody like Ridley Gregg who's a bit of a pest and they like catch him at the wrong time or whatever. But there's like an awareness or a lack of awareness at times when he like lets go of the puck or reaches for a puck and leaves himself vulnerable. And usually he's kind of just gets like stunned and he's like, "Oh, I can't believe I got hit by somebody." And tonight seeing him like get up immediately, he was like, "Nah, that wasn't okay. We're going." And it didn't look like he knew necessarily what he was doing when he started throwing hands. He's not a fighter per se,
Of course.
but he also is significantly larger than Ridley Gregg, which is, yeah, it's not exactly fair. And it seemed like as soon as Ridley Gregg kind of got his footing, was like, "I'll throw punches too." Slavkovsky was like, "What if I just take you and shake you until you fall?" And I don't mind it. I don't mind as long as he doesn't injure himself.
Yeah.
Right?
No, I'm not gonna lie. It was a better fight than I thought it would have been. I thought there's been fights where you'd be like, okay, like clearly this can be your last fight of your career. I think Sanderson had one last year against Kachuk, and if you get Sanderson mad, you're doing something right or wrong. And
Yep.
you could tell it's like this guy hasn't thrown punches since like 2015 or something like that when he was like 14 years of age. But it was a good tilt, I'm not going to lie. And I was happy that the game was sort of tamed at that point. Like, I didn't want to see
Yes.
Jack throw a stupid hit against Stutzla. And I think I noticed that towards the end, they were not putting Stutzla out there whatsoever. And that is a good thing. Like, take the L, move on. Because you never know what could have happened there with Jack. He was going after him quite a bit at one point. I think Timmy did a good job at like not backing down or whatever, but also not. Thing is, he's going to get targeted for the rest of his career, no matter what, right? He's a skilled European player. That is typically the most targeted player, I guess, if you want to call it that. And I think he did a decent job tonight in not, getting sucked in too much. And that's part of being a pro and growing. And I think he did a good job there overall. Your player of the game, I guess, tonight for, I'm going to assume is the Habs.
Yeah, definitely Slav. I really loved his game tonight. That's like easy question.
8 hits tonight as well for him.
Yeah, he was all over the place. I know that somebody on the Habs said that he needed to play like Brady Tkachuk, which I guess he took very literally.
Yeah.
I don't know if he necessarily needs to play the same way as Brady Tkachuk, but I liked what he brought tonight. I do think the big difference with Slavkovsky on like a good Slavkovsky game versus a mid or even bad Slavkovsky game is what is he doing in traffic? Is he standing or is he skating through? And tonight he was skating through. And when you have a body that big, just willing to skate through and create havoc, it just opens everything up.
Yeah. The package is there, man, but it's like, okay, what is his ceiling? But we'll talk about that a bit in our period 2 here on Game Over, as we're going to discuss the two, I guess, top left wingers, on or big power forwards, I guess you could say, between these two squads. But before that, just want to talk about Hyperdrive Hockey, which is your new source for all the biggest stories in hockey, which brings a unique style broadcast and commentary with a Quebecois flavor. It's a top tier hockey analysis with big stories, pop culture, and a fun atmosphere as well that will drive debate, make you think, and more. You can join Max, Daphne, and Kevin every Tuesday and Friday for your fill in on the hockey world. You can watch it on YouTube and all our network platforms as well. Apple, Spotify, and Amazon. You could also head over to our website for more information going forward. Okay, let's dive into the second period here, and let's talk about. Actually, first of all, Slavkovsky, does he play right wing?
Left.
Okay,
Cole is the right winger.
Okay, because I've seen it sometimes flip flop, but maybe I was seeing things. Okay, so yeah, let's talk about our two top left wingers and who. Based off their size, based off their, I guess their point trajectory as well, are similar to a degree. Just the thing is that Brady Tkachuk has always been this raw guy since day one. And you saw that at the Four Nations, his willingness has always been there. Like this guy in game 75 of the regular season in a rebuild year, he will treat it as a playoff game. That is how he plays. Slavkovsky has caught some flack for not doing that as much. But I think it was, today actually came out that Yuri Slavkovsky thought that he should play like Brady Tkachuk, which, of course, the Sens were going to eat that. The Sens fans were going to eat that up because, you had the chance to draft him in 2018, whatever, which, is true. You can't deny that. But,
yeah.
But, you get a redo at doing it in the 2022 draft. You draft a guy who is raw. Like, coming out of league, I think he had 10 points in 31 games. Not stellar numbers, but you saw the package, and you had this 6'4" guy that could skate. He has really good hands. His speed is very underrated, I find. And, of course, his shot is always going to be there. It's just how is he going to transition to the NHL, and it took some time, maybe a season and a half. Signs an 8-year contract this summer. 8 years, $7.6 million that kicks in next year. And now he hasn't been fantastic this year. And I think at least if you look at the points, at least he's on a pretty similar trajectory. Putting up on pace for 50 points, something like that. What is the difference? We'll start off with this. What is the difference from Slavkovsky this year compared to last year in terms of watching him game in, game out?
I think Slav's a bit of a slow starter, and we saw that last year, which kind of fits with Suzuki, who's also a bit of a slow starter. But Suzuki is just, at a different level right now in his career. He's in his prime, ready to go, and Slavkovsky's still finding himself and becoming the player that he will be. I think for the most part, things are pretty similar for Slav this year versus last year. I know he's been dealing with some injuries that have slowed him down at certain points, but the big thing for him is just finding it game by game. Like, he's got to be a little bit more consistent in bringing his A game most games, and right now it's like his best game comes 1 out of 5. And then he'll have 2 to 3 okay to good games, and one that you're like, oh man, that you're just struggling tonight. You're fighting the puck. The decisions aren't there. You're like throwing the puck, hoping that a guy's going to be there instead of checking.
Yeah.
And earlier in his career, it was like 4 out of 5 were that last one, where like you can see the potential. You can see him like win board battles and bring the puck off the wall to the middle, but he wasn't doing that extra step of taking the extra look, side to side, figuring out where guys are, where your teammates are, and finding them either in transition or putting the puck to where they're going. So we're seeing a lot more of that now, and you can see the instincts in playmaking. Like he's never going to score like Brady Tkachuk. I think that's something that no one should ever. No, I don't think they should ever expect.
Brady is his top season is a point per game. That's it.
Yeah. But, like, you just look at the shot numbers. Like, Brady Tkachuk, even before he started scoring, like, I remember when I was working at Sportlogic, where I was working with, like, really in-depth data.
Yeah.
And back in the day, one of the big things that I was talking about a lot internally was Zach Hyman on the Leafs when he was with Matthews and Marner. had more high danger, like high quality scoring chances than anyone in the league. Like his expected shooting percentage on the shots that he was taking was insane. And I was like, how is this guy not scoring? He's got more opportunities than anyone else, and he just isn't putting it home. Lo and behold, goes to Edmonton, things work out. Brady Tkachuk early in his career, similar thing, like shot quality off the charts. It was like him and Brendan Gallagher as the top two guys in the league, just shooting from in the crease, basically. But the goal scoring wasn't quite there for Tkachuk. So eventually, when they're putting in the inputs, I'm like, it's going to happen. And you see it with Tkachuk, right? All of a sudden, it was 30, 35, 37, and he'll probably score around that this year. Slavkovsky doesn't shoot that much. He's more of a playmaker. So the guy that I've always been comparing Slav to when I see him at his best is more like a Marian Hossa type. So a different Ottawa Senator.
Slovakian.
He has the size and capability of playing the odd game like a Brady Tkachuk, but I think he's just better served by leaning into being more of a two-way force that will surprise players physically once in a while than necessarily you're going to be out there hitting all the time and like banging in front of the net. Like, yeah, go to the net, but run good routes. Don't necessarily feel like you have to be fighting it out in front.
I feel like if you are a Habs fan, though, at 20 years of age, I think he's 21 in like a month or two, but you can appreciate him saying that he wants to play meaner right now rather than it, like him coming out and saying it at 20 years of age and saying, oh, I need to play like this other player, which is crazy. You don't hear comments like that much. You don't hear a guy like, I don't know, random player. Like, I don't think I've heard Nick Suzuki say, oh, I want to play like Patrice Bergeron, which he's being compared to in the past and still is. But you don't see that often. And thing is, he's now going to have more pressure on him because he said those words like, okay, you have to play to the ability of Brady Tkachuk, who is, like, I can probably say this on this stream here, he is maybe the best power forward in the league. Like, power forward, true, like when it comes to physicality and scoring, he is top notch.
It's a rare breed.
Yeah, exactly. Like, because there's not a lot of them nowadays, but I think that like him saying that now at 20 is better than him not saying it and having coaches try to coach him into that sort of player.
Very much true.
Right? You want to let the players just be the players. Be the players that they've always been and where they found success. And there was a reason to some degree why he was the first overall pick, because he got there because of his skills. You can't, there's not many stories out there where a player might have to change his game that much, unless it's like a really skilled guy who in like juniors or NCAA has come, it's always a top scorer, and then when they got to the NHL level, they couldn't really put it together, so then they had to become a defensive player. Juraj Slavkovsky already has that part of the game figured out because he's going to get opportunities on the top line. And I think also, like, he has played with Suzuki and Caulfield basically the whole year, right?
For the most part, yeah. There's been stretches here and there where they've split them up, but for the most part, yeah.
So, like, you can just know that there are two guys on your line that are already established in the league. No one's calling them a bust and stuff or overhyped, and you can kind of just defer to them. And then eventually there's going to be a day where you've been in the league for 5-6 years and you're used to the grind. You can kind of maybe start to carry your old line because you're 23, 24, you're established, you still got the young legs, right? And your confidence is probably at an all-time high because you're new to the league in a way, but you're also, it's not like you're 35 and you're just not, like, you're beat down to some degree. So
yeah, you got nothing else to give.
Exactly. So it's a great thing that he is just playing consistently with Suzuki and Caulfield, and he can play a role that he's comfortable in. And I mean, so far so good, I guess, to some degree. We'll see how his career develops, I guess. But there's some good things to look out for going forward. It's just the big question is like, okay, what is his ceiling?
Yeah, what is it? Yeah, and I think that's like the big question that I think Canadiens fans, they're pondering, but I don't think the realization has happened yet that like Slavkovsky doesn't have to be a first overall quality player like that idea that you have like the franchise cornerstone at first overall for it to be a successful pick because that player frankly wasn't available in that
No, it
draft. Like,
wasn't.
there will be great players. And honestly, 5-6 years from now, the point leader in that draft class might be Lane Hudson.
It's
So
crazy.
keeping Lane Hudson out of that draft is pretty decent. And also, like, I wouldn't write off Philip Meshar yet from that draft. And I think they also got Owen Beck in that draft, who's likely going to be on the team next year, maybe even after the trade deadline this year, depending on what happens. That's a pretty nice first draft for Kent Hughes. Even if Slavkovsky ends up being like the third or fourth best player in that draft class, they can weather that because of the amount of talent that they brought in. And also, it doesn't hurt to have Demidov coming soon.
Yeah, was Fowler in that draft too? Was he in that draft, or was he in the next year?
Fowler was the following year because he's the guy that I kind of grabbed onto from that year, outside of Reinbacher, of course, who's going to be a good player. That I was like, I didn't like that draft overall. I thought they kind of went backwards to like the Bergevin values in that draft.
Yeah.
But Fowler specifically, I remember watching like his interview that they released with the scouts, and I was like, I like this kid. He's got a chip on his shoulder, and I love. I mean, I'm biased because I'm a short dude, but I like undersized players. And I know Fowler's not like super small for a goalie, for example, but he is a guy who clearly grew up small and has that chip on the shoulder of like, people told me that I couldn't do this, and I'm going to prove him wrong. And he's been the best goalie in like every league he's ever played in. So that kind of stuff, it sells me.
Yeah. Yeah, you look at Saros. He's like, I think this year is his down year, and he's not even doing that bad overall, and he's 5'11" as a goaltender. So, I always thought that was such a weird conundrum because you look at a guy like right now, Matt Sogard, who is 6'7", 6'8" for the Sens, and he has he's been injured this year in the AHL, but he has like an 850 at both levels. Had his couple of games here with the Sens, and then with his 10 games or so in the AHL. Merrilainen has passed him because Merrilainen has, he's 6'3", 6'2", not the biggest goalie in the world, but he is consistent when it comes to, I think, I don't want to say his maturity, but just knowing how to use the tools that you have, and like being a goaltender is a mental battle, and he is as calm as you can get. So it's kind of doing it with the tools you can. And with Slavkovsky, he has all the tools. Will he be a Brady Tkachuk when it comes to the grittiness part? I don't think so. That's a fair thing to say. And, I think, like, Brady right now, he's 25, right? So he's in the prime of his career when it comes to the type of game that you play. I do wonder how his game is going to go into his 30s because right now it's so valuable, right? Because he's insanely physical, he's the captain, and he scores goals, he goes to the front of the net, and isn't really injury prone. I know he's injured tonight, but he's barely missed more than like 3 games in a season.
Yeah.
I'm wondering how his game is going to progress down the line, if maybe he's going to have to switch it up a little bit, because playing like that game in, game out it's got to be exhausting, man.
100%. And it's funny. I find the injury talk, most of it is about like players like Brady Tkachuk who play that like physical talk when they're young, and like, oh, how's their game gonna trend? And I remember a lot of those conversations about Brendan Gallagher, right? And ironically, like, Gallagher has gone through a whole mess of injuries that have derailed his career that he's kind of like found a way back from, and he's having like pretty damn good year this year in a much more limited role after like a pretty decent year last year as well. But most of those injuries that ended up like screwing him over and taking him out have been random. Like the biggest injury that really derailed Brendan Gallagher's career was I think it was in 2019-20, where people kind of see that year because of the playoffs. He barely scored in the playoffs as like a failure offensively. He had 22 goals in 59 games, and then he took a Shea Weber shot to the hand, and it like blew up his hand.
Yeah.
And then he came back from that injury, or maybe it was an earlier injury that he had that, and that was the second one. But either way, he came back from that and took another slap shot in the hand. I believe it was the same hand.
Yeah.
and broke it again.
Yeah.
So like that just destroyed his shot. Before that stretch, like he's never been a high quality shooter in the first place. He's been more about like getting to the right positions and knocking in rebounds and stuff. But he was like 31 goals, 33 goals, and then 22 and 59 games, which is about a 30 goal pace again. And then it was like 14 and 35, 7 and 56, 8 and 37, 16 and 77. And this year at 15 and 57 is strong. Yeah. Maybe it's 16, but like it took years to get back to that level of goal scoring and a lot of rehab, I assume. Mm-hmm. Some of that's just like plain dumb luck. It's just the way it goes, right?
Yeah, I mean, when you play that sort of game, and those players are so valuable because it's a dying breed for players that are going to willingly like go to the front of the net, shift in, shift out. Shot blockers, that's another one of them guys who will like just put their body on the line. And not saying that players are getting lazier, I guess. It's just kind of how the game is going. It's favoring skill and speed. I mean, you look at a guy like Lane Hudson. He has just sort of thrived in the NHL. Yeah, like he's doing it really well. Yeah, like he's on track to win the Calder this year. So, and he's 20, and he's a 5'9", I think, defenseman. Defensively, there's some things to work on there, but he's 20, man. It's gonna happen. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, we'll see where Slafkovsky does end up, but there's a lot of leeway to go for sure. But before we head into period number 3 here, just want to talk about ourselves and how we're over 30 young journalists and analysts from across Canada. If you have a few spare bucks kicking around, just head to our Patreon page, and we would love your support. You'll find multiple tiers featuring different rewards and goodies to help us grow. There's extra access and exclusive looks behind the scenes, Discord benefits, merch discounts, and opportunities for you to give us feedback as we go forward with this show. And I mean, it's been a good year so far. We're 60 games into the season, and things have gone really, really well. So if you're able to spare a few dollars, we would really appreciate that. And we have a free tier available, so don't miss out. If you want to help us, make sure to click like and also subscribe on YouTube as well. Okay, period number 3 here in this crossover. If anyone has any questions or comments in the chat, we'll get to that in the overtime segment. I think we're pushing 40 minutes here. This is sort of going to be a brief period, I think, at the end of the day. But where we think our opposing teams, so I'm going to be talking about Montreal and you're going to be talking about Ottawa, where we think our teams are at in the standings. Like how we're going to end the year, basically. Like, what's the record going to be? Are they going to be in the playoffs? Are they not? Are they going to go on a little bit of a slide? Are they going to go on a tear? I'll start with you. Can I start with you?
Yeah, absolutely. My impression of the Ottawa Senators, obviously not their best game tonight, but frankly, I kind of like this team, despite myself that I'm my classic Sens hater. I kind of was a big part of. Well, no, I kind of, for those who don't know, I kind of built some of the rivalry between the Habs and Senators back in, I guess it was the 2013 playoffs where the Senators won. Oh, right. The Canadiens were the top seed, and I remember there was just like not a lot of like back and forth on Twitter. Like hockey Twitter was the big thing back then. Mm-hmm. So I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna like tongue in cheek see if I can get people riled up and talking about this series a little bit. So I just wrote a like tongue in cheek column about how like PK Subban had this great year, probably gonna win the Norris, and Karlsson missed like the whole year. For I think it was like the ankle injury from Matt Cook, the Achilles.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
And he was coming back in time for the playoffs. And I was like, I'm just going to talk about how like Karlsson sucks. And I'm going to be like, actually, he didn't even get hurt. He pretended that he was hurt the whole season so that he would like not have to worry about being in PK Subban's shadow. It's just like total bullshit, and put the hashtag Karlsson sucks on Twitter, and it like trended across.
Did it really?
It really, yeah, it did. It went nuts, and like Senators fans went nuts on me, and I was like, "This is great. This is too much fun." And I made some enemies. It was very interesting, but that was like my first experience with like hardcore Sens Twitter, and has stayed with me ever since. There's some people who still don't like me because of that.
And then you continue to stay and work in sports and media for the rest of your career. Which, like, it's
Yeah, pretty
crazy, man,
much.
because I have, like, I'll be tempted to tweet something about a player or his performance or something, but I'm like, there's a possibility down the line where me, myself, I may be working for that team and interviewing that player one day, and that could, end up costing me something to some degree. So just let that be known. If you are looking to get into sports media to some degree, you have to have a sort of basis on things that you can't say, even though you might.
100%.
Yeah.
And having worked in this industry for a long time now, I will also warn anybody who wants to break into it that people are far more sensitive than you think.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody who is very established and you would think is not that sensitive will name search themselves
Yep.
and get very upset about any
Mm-hmm.
tiny little criticism. So definitely be careful. But also, I would advise folks to not like mute their own voice for the faint idea of making it. Because the other thing to be noticed, like to know about the sports media industry, is most people won't stay in it. It's a very low
It's
paying, low
fluid.
number of jobs industry
Mm-hmm.
with a lot of layoffs, and the grind of it is tough, and a lot of people choose to move on.
For sure.
So I'd say if you're gonna do it, make sure you're doing it in a way that sparks joy inside your heart and your brain.
Exactly.
And if that's being more of a risk taker, then be more of a risk taker. And if it's not, then don't.
Yeah, I think some people, not to get too off topic, but they'll see someone like Stephen A. Smith, who I think it was reported that he got offered $5 million per season or something like that. That
I wish.
that's yeah, we all wish, right? But you do it for the love of what you like to talk about, which is sports. So, okay, so you think that the Sens will make it to the playoffs, correct?
I do, and I mean, what I'm hoping for, just as a hockey fan, and also as a Leaf hater, I want to see the Battle of Ontario in
Mm-hmm.
the first round. Like, I know that the Leafs have a bit of a tough sled to try to outpace the two Florida teams to take that top spot in the Atlantic in order to face Ottawa, because I don't think Ottawa is going to get into that third spot. I mean, they could. They're not actually that far behind. But I
Yeah.
think in the wild card makes more sense for them. But I would absolutely love it. And I think that if they do face off against each other in the first round, I think this is the time that the Leafs fans think they're going to slay the dragon of like getting out of the first round again. I think this is the time that the Ottawa Senators slay the dragon of finally beating the Leafs in the
Yeah,
playoffs.
because they've never done
After
it.
that whole stretch of time where they were like the best team in the league
Yeah.
and continually lose
Mm-hmm.
to the Leafs in the playoffs, I think this is the time where they get to have some revenge.
Yeah, the thing is that if the Sens, if they make the playoffs and they play the Leafs, if thank God the Leafs beat Tampa, because imagine we were the team that they beat after what
Ugh,
8, 9 seasons of missing the playoffs, and then we were the team that
awful.
right. But the thing is, I don't want to play Florida because we are losing that series. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Tampa, you could, but Tampa's probably not making it to the first spot. I don't think. Washington, I actually would take to some degree because they haven't had any adversity this year, and then
Yeah, they haven't.
and Carolina, yeah, we're cooked there. New Jersey, maybe, but I would welcome Toronto, Tampa Bay to some degree, and Washington. As far as the Habs go, so here's the thing. I'll ask you this first because you are 500 on the season, and like
Mhm.
there was some hype to the Habs this year, and the thing is, there's so many Habs fans out there, so some are going to be delusional.
Of course.
Sens fans too. I mean, hey, I remember us talking about this team in the summer of 2022. We were like, this team is going to be a top 3 team. Look at our top 6. We are going to be a force to reckon with, and we didn't make the playoffs. And then this summer, you guys acquired Line A. You signed Slavkovsky long term. Those were your 2 big moves. You didn't really add anyone else, but the thing is, just the young talent that was on your team. You had, on paper, Newhook, Doc was coming back too, right? And right now you're 500. So are you satisfied with that?
That's a great question, and I think most Habs fans are kind of split, honestly, because this has been such a weird season in that it's been so back and forth. Like the beginning of the season, from like I don't have any facts here. I'm not talking to the players every day. But my read of what happened was this was a team that thought they were ready to take the next step. And then Reinbacher and Laine got injured in the same game, I believe against the Senators, wasn't it? In preseason.
No, it was Leafs. It was Leafs.
Oh, Leafs.
Yeah.
You're right. It was the Leafs. It was the Leafs. And that kind of took the wind out of their sails, but they went into the season still thinking in the mix. Like that was the thing they kept on hammering home. We're going to be in the mix to make the playoffs. And all of a sudden everything fell apart.
Yeah.
And not only did they not look ready, they looked like really unserious levels of unready. And I think they just collapsed a little bit and felt sorry for themselves, and it took a while to dig out of it. And once they had, and then Laine came back, all of a sudden they had this little bit of extra depth scoring, power plays a little bit better, and the work that they'd done while losing to get better started to show, and things turned around, and then all of a sudden things fall apart again. They had this crazy road trip over the holidays. They traveled over 25,000 kilometers, played like all of the best teams in the league and basically beat all of them. And everyone was like, what the hell is going on here? And not just beat them, but like played well the whole time too. And I think they just ran out of gas heading into this break, and they knew that the break was coming. So because you know it's happening, I think that running out of gas feels worse, right? Because you know you're going to get the break, and they just limped into it. And I'm hoping that the rest of the season is not the same as the holiday break where they were crushing it. I would like to ignore the first month of the season and look at the rest of it as its own kind of season and just repeat that over again for the rest of the year, where you're playing hard, you're playing to the whistle. There's going to be games where you lose. There's going to be games where you lose bad, but play hard the whole time as if you have a chance to win, and like forge the habits now that you'll need when you are in the playoffs. That's what I want to see. And I think we're seeing a lot of that. So satisfied is probably the wrong word, but I think there's a lot of good things to key on with what's happened this year in terms of like individual and team development.
Yep. And I don't think the Habs are making the playoffs this year. I will just say that to start off.
I don't either.
And if I was a fan, I would be pretty content where the team is at, because okay, you have your top line's doing great. You have this guy Lane Hudson who's only entering the league and is, what is he at 45 points right now, leading the rookie scoring right now in the entire league, and it's only up from here, right? So this is the perfect spot to be in the rebuilds in some cases, because your young guys are performing. They're getting all the opportunities in the world. You're seeing a guy like Uri Slafkovsky tonight put on a great performance, and it's like, okay, this is what he's going to be like for the rest of his career. For 70 out of the 82 games, he's going to put up a performance like that. And it's easy to get sucked into those individual performances. And there's some pieces right now that you guys are looking very good. I don't know about like your goaltending, because in terms of the Montembeault is at best, I think, a tandem goaltender, and even then he hasn't had stellar numbers really at all over his career. He's been pretty good this year, I think, for you guys, but I'm not sold on him to being a legit starter in this league. Yes, the Goulet injury crushed any chances that they had. True. Goulet was fantastic for you guys. You don't need like a player like, well, ideally you have a player like Goulet in your lineup 1 through 6, but having a guy that can you just throw out there for 21, 22 minutes a night and play an efficient hockey is very helpful for your coaching staff. So I would say, like, you have the pieces with Doc, Suzuki, Caulfield. Suzuki, I'm not sure, like, long term, it's like, okay, if you're going on a deep playoff run, is he a legit number one center, 25 points in 20 games in a playoff run, 90 points in the regular season while playing good defense? Is he that? He's close, but I'm not sure if he is that year in, year out. Slavkovsky is that ideal big winger, and then Cole Caulfield is your goal scorer. Lane Hudson is your offensive defenseman back there, and then you have Line who can sort of be your secret weapon, I guess, if you want to say. If he gets hot in the playoffs, that could be great. But then if he's invisible, it's going to be pretty bad.
Yep.
You got Hage coming in, but he's a couple years away probably. And then, of course, Demidov, my bad. Demidov, he looks tremendous right now. Apparently he's not coming into the lineup this year, though. He's not eligible. I could be wrong on that. I saw a report not too long ago that he can't transition from the KHL to the NHL, but I could be wrong. I know maybe you're researching that right now, but the pieces are there. Yeah. Just the only thing is next year, right? Next year, you're probably expected to make the playoffs because this is what the Sens had after the 23 season. It's like, okay, 2024, you added a goaltender in Korpisalo, you added Tarasenko, you have Chikrin now in your top four, and then they just straight up were bad the entire year. So just know that it's not always linear. Two different organizations we're talking about here, but there is that opportunity. It's possible that the Habs do take a step back next year.
Yeah, and that's something that I've been trying to talk about every once in a while. Not just with teams, right? With players, with development, right? Everyone kind of expected Kirby Dach to be Kirby Dach from 2 years ago, or even the beginning of training camp last year when he came back. But when you miss a whole year for a knee injury, there's going to be issues, and it's not all going to be physical. Some of it's going to be in your head, trusting that knee to not fall apart when you do the things that you're expected to do as a bit of a rough and tumble center in the NHL. A lot of things like that will happen. Individuals will regress. So you might count on one guy to score 30. He's going to score 19 one year, and things fall apart. You have to have the depth to weather that. I think the Canadiens are actually in a pretty good situation in that they actually have a lot of depth coming up that is almost NHL ready. Guys like Owen Beck, a bunch of the guys that they brought into the American Hockey League this year are kind of found money. Even some guys that maybe different fan bases haven't heard of, like Jared Davidson. He was not going to be a high-end scorer in the NHL, but he could jump onto a fourth line on most teams, I think, right now and be an effective player. You've also got guys like Florian Xhekaj, the other Xhekaj, who's basically forward Xhekaj and has been great in the American Hockey League. Most people thought that pick was just kind of a fun pick, in the third or fourth round. He's looked great. And then there's been, I forget the first name now, something Tuck. It's not Alex Tuck.
Luke.
That's Luke Tuck. And everyone thought that pick was terrible too, because in college he looked awful. And then all of a sudden this year in the American Hockey League, he's been phenomenal. One of the better bottom six guys in the entire American Hockey League, if you talk to people who've been on the rocket all year long. So there's lots of these little bits and pieces that they can fit in spots as the team kind of changes, gets a little bit younger over the next couple of years. I think they're in a good spot, but you're right. Things aren't linear. You can't take for granted that it's going to be easier the next year. But Demidov is supposed to come over at the end of this year. I believe his KHL contract ends in the summer. Yeah. Oh, Bernardo Sanya says Joshua Waugh as well, who's had a really tough year this year. Talking about non-linear development, it hasn't been easy for him. But there's a lot of players that the Canadiens have that are ready to make that jump. And then you've also got Reinbacher, who will likely also make the jump next year. So there's a lot of changing going on, a lot of moving objects right now, and there are pieces, but we have yet to see how everything fits together. There's an idea of how it fits together, and I think the plan is good. I believe in what they're building because I can see the blueprints, right? And you can see where pieces slot and fit and how they make sense, but the players still have to execute. And that's sports.
Yeah, it
at
is.
The end of the day.
And coming out of rebuild is hard. For us, it's okay. You have Stützle, Norris, Pinto down the middle. That's in their lineup. They played 82 games or just over 82 games, and they have won, I think, 50 of them. Which cool if they're in the lineup, but the odd thing is that these players get injured, and then. Of course, you have Brady, who's on the left side, your power forward. Drake Batherson, who is 70-point player in this league. You have Claude Giroux. And then on the back end, you have Jake Sanderson, who is getting better every year, and he's discovering an offensive game, already tremendous defensively. Thomas Chabot, like Artem Zub.
Great player.
Yeah, and you have Ullmark now. So, yeah, like the pieces are there, right? It's just, you kind of got to let it, you got to see it to believe it.
Yep.
And I'm holding out on, the playoffs and stuff this year because I'm ready to get hurt again. Like, that's the thing. Until this team really hits like 40 wins on the year and we're at like game 70, I will be pretty confident. But we've gone on a 4-game slide now. And 2 of our top 6, or 3 of our top 6, I guess you could argue, players are out of the lineup. And right now we're like our bottom 6 tonight, man. Like we have
Not your favorite?
No, we have Ostapchuk should be in the AHL, and he's played the entire year for the Sens. He's going to be a good player one day, but I just wonder if they're ruining his development this year because he has like 4 points in 45 games. Cole Reinhardt has like 2 in like 15. Highmore is being the Cousins replacement. He's been okay, but you can afford to only have one of those guys in your lineup, and Adam Gaudette's kind of a black hole right now. So there's like 4 guys out of your 11 forwards tonight that shouldn't just be in the lineup regardless, game in, game out. You just got to hope that the players who were out tonight, 3 of them come back very soon. I just want the Sens to add someone. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much all I got, at least for the Habs this year. It's a good year, I would say, so far in terms of expectations. Just be cautious. That's all that I'll say.
And everything changes when the expectations change, right? And we saw it earlier this year with the tough start and people were expecting in the mix. Mm-hmm. When the expectations in the playoffs, fan attitudes change, right? Everyone's been very patient through the rebuild, and I think that there's been this constant push from media that like, oh, fans aren't going to take this rebuild for that much longer. No, fans get it. Like, fans are smart. But when the expectations are changed to winning, people will expect to see winning and also winning habits. And teams that are coming out of rebuilds, like there are periods of time where the winning habits they're just not necessarily there because the team is used to being able to lose. Should we get to some fan questions before we close it out?
Yes, I would just like to read our merch ad, though. So if you'd like to support us, please head to our website. There is tons of apparel available on our website. I don't know what's on sale right now, but I'm sure there are a couple of items for, some of the Canadian markets out there. We got 7.
Anybody who signs up for the newsletter that we're doing, because we have a new newsletter that's dropping once a month for sure, but also I'm going to be writing more frequently on the website as well, and I'll send out those in the newsletters. There's a $10 off coupon for the skater hoodies, which are nice little design. So if anybody wants $10 off a hoodie, you just got to sign up your email to get another email from us where I will write fun stuff that you can read.
There you go. Okay, cool. Was there any I got to skim through the chat here, but I'm not used to this many
Bernardo
comments.
had a question for you. Yeah. Bernardo said, do you think Yakimchuk will be good?
So Yakimchuk's a funny case. I would say yes. So Yakimchuk was like, when you looked at the draft this past summer, the Sens fans were mostly sold on, okay, it's probably going to be Dickinson or it's going to be Parekh. And both players have been nasty in the OHL this year. Yakimchuk has been around a point per game, which is a little bit disappointing to some degree. But the thing is that Yakimchuk is more of a goal scorer. So I think right now he has around 15 goals or something like that. Last year he had over 30. Parekh did as well, but thing is that it's the size. And so Yakimchuk came into the lineup in the preseason and was there until the last day. And I don't think a lot of people were expecting that. They even played a couple games against the Habs in the preseason. And I don't know if you remember him taking that one-timer on the power play from the left side. It was a bomb. And you're like, whoa, this guy, like, he looks comfortable out there. He's not fast. And he's not insanely physical, but he does throw some really good hits out there. And his defending wasn't that bad as some were saying. So there is a ceiling there for sure. Maybe not the biggest point getter in terms of assists, like a guy who's going to get 50, 60 assists and win the Norris, like a Quinn Hughes type of player. But there is a potential there that there's a guy like Brent Burns, a guy who's going to score 20 goals a year, 10 on the power play, just with a huge shot. And maybe not be a number one defenseman, but if he is insulated with a player like Jake Sanderson, that could be a pretty good pair going forward. A pair that has size and has offense and defense to offer. So, yes, Yakimchuk, I think will be good. I think at the end of the day, his ceiling is like a number two defenseman. And his low end, he could actually bust. It's possible he busts. With a guy like Sanderson, like his floor was like a second pair defenseman. With Yakimchuk, I could see a scenario. It's not very highly likely for it to happen, but I could see a scenario where he does end up as, like a guy that heads to Europe.
Yeah. I mean, it can happen, right? And defenseman taken high, it's always a little bit risky, but he's a good player. I remember watching in the preseason and thinking there was a pretty decent chance that he would get a cup of coffee to start the season because he looked good, like he was smooth, and you were mentioning like defense, definitely it's going to be tougher, but any 19-year-old who's in the NHL right away, like there's going to be some defensive issues, especially for someone like a defenseman who has those extra responsibilities, right? Also, I got to shout out to Yakimchuk. I don't know if he grew up there or not, but I see he was born in Fort McMurray, Alberta, where I lived from age 11 to 18. Nice. So I will immediately be in his corner for that.
Yeah, he's a quiet guy, but there's like he has some leadership as well. He was snubbed from the World Junior Championship, like so many players were.
That was interesting choices there. And Perek too, or Perek was also snubbed. Like, Hockey Canada,
Misa too. Anyway, I think probably have room for one more comment here. Was there any in the chat that you liked there?
Yeah, Trinka said, is Suzuki going to finish the year point per game player? I say yes, he is. I think the only thing holding back Suzuki from being a point per game player consistently is Slavkovsky finding his peak game. Mm-hmm. When he's on it, those two other guys are on it most nights. And Suzuki and Caulfield by themselves, with Slav like not playing great, I think are an okay first line. Like they can kind of hold their own against most of the first lines in the league and score here and there.
Yeah.
When Slav is bringing it too, they go from okay to like, this is a dangerous line that can fire against pretty much any line in the NHL. Not necessarily outplay them all, but they're dangerous against anyone. And I think that's the thing that's going to push Suzuki from like 70-ish points to 80, 85. And I don't expect him to get much more than that unless scoring in the league goes way up, just because there's just too many responsibilities that Suzuki has to handle. Like, he can't play 30 minutes a night, even though I bet you he'd probably try. But when Demidov comes over and they can actually have a second line, that might open up Suzuki a little bit too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think he'll probably finish right below that, right around 75 points, which I think, last year he had 77. So,
nothing to sneeze at.
No, for sure. That's what I'm saying about his ceiling. It's like, okay, he's going to be 26 this summer. Is he going to be a legit number one center? I think he's like a safe option. Like when you look at a guy like Dylan Larkin, right? Those guys are right around the point totals and where they were drafted and stuff. I think Larkin was like mid-teens in the 20s, something like that. Same thing with Suzuki, who was a number 13 overall pick. Like they're not drafted for their upside, but they're drafted for their solid play on both ends of the rink, and leaders too. They're both captains, and can be good first line centers, but it just comes to, it's like, okay, are you Nathan McKinnon, right, or Alexander?
Yeah, that's not
hard to do.
Yeah, but those guys, much harder to find those guys
for sure. For sure. Okay. Yeah, we're just over an hour here. So thanks for joining Game Over Ottawa here. Thank you, everyone in the chat as well. Yeah, we got one more matchup between both squads right now in the regular season. Hopefully, the Sens will actually beat the Habs, and which they can. I know that, but they just don't want to apparently. So, thanks, Andrew, for joining, and have a good night, everyone, and go Canada. We'll end off with that. Good night, everyone.
All right, later, guys.